progress.
Good morning. Welcome to the Thursday, May 16th, 2024 meeting of the Palo Alto Architecture Review Board. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Belte.
Present.
Vice Chair Rosenberg, absent. Board Member Adcock. Present. Board Member Chen. Present. Board Member Hirsch.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is public comment. Do we have any members of the public wishing to address us on any item not on our agenda today?
No raised hands and no speaker cards.
Okay, I see no one in chambers. Next item is agenda changes, additions, and deletions. Staff, do we have any changes, additions, or deletions?
No changes at this time.
Thank you. Next item is city official reports. Staff, can we have a report, please?
Yes, good morning, Jody Gerhardt, Manager of Current Planning. For next item, for January 6th, sorry, June 6th. June 6th, the tentative agenda is 640 Waverly. This will be a first formal, and I don't believe we're asking for a recommendation quite yet on that one. Also, lighting and bird safe glass is possible, although I think we were maybe making some last minute changes. So we'll see if that one really goes forward on that date. June 20th, we have 3000 El Camino Real and 4075 El Camino Way. As far as new projects, let's see. Packet page 12, it doesn't look like we have any new ones. I believe you've already heard about 762 San Antonio. And then on packet page 14, the 3997 Fabian is really just a redo of a 330 that they already had on file. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is our action item. We're going to move to our first action item, which is a public hearing about 525 University and 530 Lytton Avenue. Recommendation on an applicant's request for major architecture review approval for two master sign programs with sign exceptions at 525 University Avenue and 530 Lytton Avenue. The project at 525 University includes 5 signs: 1 illuminated directory sign, 1 illuminated canopy address sign, 1 illuminated wall property ID sign, 1 illuminated parking sign, and 1 illuminated parking directional directory sign. The project at 530 Lytton includes 4 signs: 1 illuminated directory sign, 1 illuminated wall property ID sign, 1 illuminated parking ID sign, and 1 illuminated parking blade sign. With that, can we get a staff report, please?
Hi, good morning. My name is Emily Callis. I'm the project planner for 525 University and 530 Lytton for the master sign program and sign exceptions.
Emily, could I pause you for 1 second? I'd like to go through disclosures. I forgot to do that. Do we have any disclosures from staff or from the members of the board? Board Member Adcock, any disclosures?
I did visit the site and noticed that it's currently there's construction going on around it on pretty much all sides and fenced in. So existing signs are not there anymore. That is in comparison. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Chen?
I've been to the site and same observation.
I visited the site and have the same observation as well. Board Member Hirsch?
I live close to the site, so I pass it all the time, but I didn't focus specifically on it this time, and I'm glad I didn't go.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. If you could continue, please.
Okay, so the project location is the block between University Avenue and Lytton Avenue and Cowper Street and Tasso Street, comprised of 4 office buildings under the address 525 University and 530 Lytton. The 525 University address or building is eligible for the California Register of Historic Resources. And the prior entitlement, 21 PLN 00209, is the project that you noted is currently under construction, which is primarily landscape and minor facade changes. They're adding like a canopy in the courtyard area and that sort of thing. So that's what's currently under construction. The project overview for what's in front of us this morning is 2 master sign programs with sign exceptions. The 525 University address side has the canopy address sign, directory sign, wall property ID sign, parking ID, and parking directional signs. And 530 Lytton has its own directory sign, wall property ID sign, and parking ID and blade signs. This is a map. I combined the 2 maps from each plan set. So this shows all of the signs with 3 signs kind of near the parking entrance on each side, and then the directory signs close to the primary entrances of the buildings. 525 University, I wanted to start with the canopy address sign because we don't typically regulate building numbers. They are required to have them, and so this is a complying sign. For the, sorry, excuse me, directory sign, what's shown on the left is the existing 96-inch tall directory sign. And what's shown in the middle is what's proposed, also 96 inches. I tried my best to get them to look the same size on the slide. And then on the right is what the sign would look like in its proposed location. The reason why this sign requires a sign exception is where it says 525 University at the top exceeds 4 square feet. It's about 6 square feet or 6.5 square feet. And so that is what the exception is needed for. Likewise, at 530 University, a directory sign is proposed. This one is 71 inches and going in the current location of an address monument sign. The total sign area for the 525 one was 20 square feet, and then this one for 530 is about 15 square feet. This shows the proposed wall property ID sign. An existing monument sign is being removed, and then this one is proposed on the retaining wall on the Tasso Street frontage. In terms of size, it is a complying size. However, its location is non-complying because wall signs are not typically allowed to project over the height of the wall that they are mounted on, as this one does in the illustration. Another wall property ID sign is going on the other side. However, this one does not exceed the wall height and is therefore considered complying. This is the parking ID sign at the 525 University entrance, again on Tasso Street. The existing sign is kind of a cluster of smaller signs. And so this proposed sign would be one single continuous sign with the same information. Overall, all of the signage proposed for the site, the intent is to unify what's currently a combination of non-matching signs. And then at 530 Lytton, the same essentially sign is proposed, but the existing one looks slightly different than what's on the other side. Also at 525 University, there is an existing kind of directional type of sign that includes the car coming indicator light. The proposal is to make this sign, smaller, simpler, but still contain the car coming indicator light, which is a requirement from the Office of Transportation. And so typically this type of directional sign would have a maximum size of 6 square feet. 3 square feet. And the proposed one is 7.36 square feet. But we consider that that is appropriate considering the size of the driveway that it's indicating and the need to have the built-in car coming indicator. And then on the 530 Lytton side, instead of having it be a freestanding sign, it's a blade sign attached to the retaining wall. This would not be typically allowed to have a blade sign of this size, but again, because having the car coming indicator is important, and the parking sign will provide wayfinding for cars, pedestrians, and bicyclists, it is something that staff supports. The key considerations are the sign exception findings need to be met. And so those are that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applicable to the property that do not generally apply to other properties in the same district. The granting of the application is necessary for the preservation of enjoyment of a substantial property right of the applicant and to prevent unreasonable property loss or hardship. And the granting of the application will not be detrimental or injurious to property or improvements in the vicinity and will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, general welfare, or convenience of the public. This project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act per code section 15301 for existing facilities and 15311 for signage. And staff recommends that the Architectural Review Board recommend approval of the project to the Director of Planning and Development Services. That concludes my presentation, and the applicant is available on Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. If we could now have the applicant present their project. Do we have them, I guess, online?
Yes, we're here.
If you could please introduce yourself and spell your name for the record, and you'll have 10 minutes to speak, please.
Sure. So my name is Will Pike, WILLPIKE, representing Lux Create, the signage designer on behalf of the client. So I can do a kind of quick synopsis of our process and how we reach these designs and the quantity. So essentially, with the signage designs themselves, we took into consideration the site and the architecture. We wanted to kind of pay homage to the brutalist, some of the detailing in the vertical. And yeah, Emily, do you mind actually pulling up some of the pages from the package? Perfect. I don't know if you could kind of flip to one of the isometric views to see some of the sign designs themselves here. Yeah, I suppose you can see a little bit on the bottom left image, but essentially you can see some of the detailing in the base. There's a lot of vertical elements in the buildings with kind of a curved supports. So we wanted to take that detail and apply it to the signs themselves and the base detailing. Also, since it is a very vertical site, specifically 525 building, significantly and substantially higher than some of the surrounding buildings in the neighborhood, we wanted to, where possible, implement some of these vertical signs as directories for the campus. We also wanted to keep it a pretty minimal palette, so that's why we chose this really dark gray and white to kind of keep it clean, not be too busy or intrusive to the surrounding neighborhood. We wanted to essentially, as we showed, not propose anything that would be significantly more signage or more intrusive to the site, but also aid in wayfinding. So we proposed text height and panel sizing that we found would be appropriate based on multiple site surveys and line of sight visibility studies. And there was some difficulty, considered a lot of different angles of approach from both pedestrian and vehicular standpoints. So we wanted to select orientations and locations that we found would be the best suited. Some of those being where existing signs were located, and others in slightly adjusted locations. So essentially, as we mentioned, there's the primary sign types with the parking blade sign, identifying the garage entrances since they are pretty set back from the road. The overheads wouldn't quite be sufficient. as well as the pedestrian directory signs, which I mentioned, the two kind of at either end of the property, primarily identifying from pedestrian path traffic once you arrive at the site, the tenants that are located in either building, and then the overhead signs, which are existing and standard, and then lastly the wall signs, which have meant to have a more presence on both sides of the property from a vehicular and pedestrian standpoint, since directories are fairly small and more geared towards building entrances. The last detailing I can mention is the perforated metal, which and the yes, there you go, which is just meant to add a little bit more intriguing texture and to the designs, the signage materials. Aside from that, it's just white acrylic and dark paint. So again, a pretty neutral palette that we wanted to, and we feel complements the existing site. So I think those are the kind of key points I'd want to touch on. Happy to address anything else or answer any questions as needed.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Next, let's open the meeting to public comment. Do we have anyone who wishes to address us on this project?
No speaker cards and no raised hands.
Okay, and seeing no one in chambers, we will close this meeting to public comment and go through a round of questions from the board. Colleagues, do we have any questions for either the applicant or staff? Board Member Adcock?
I do
Go
have
ahead.
questions, if I may. Thank you for the presentation, Emily and the applicant. I do have, I'll just go through my questions there, kind of variety of topics. I'll start with the material, the perforated aluminum in our sample board and on your packet is, looks like mill finished aluminum. But in your renderings, if I understand it correctly, it's basically going on the monument sign behind the white text, and it looks dark in the renders. Is it intended to be dark aluminum, like your black umber type finish, or is it actually intended to be acrylic? So I guess there's a question for the applicant.
Yeah, so that's just an example of the size and scale of the perforation. The finish would match the dark gray, so it would appear like the rendering. That's really just so the size and scale of the pattern itself.
This is this color.
And
So
the material is
Black
aluminum.
umber color, or?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. My next question is about the number sign on 525 over the canopy. It looks, if I understand your canopy detail, which is on page 10 of the drawings. It appears to be attached to an existing outrigger, and I did go look at the site, and it has, is it going over the existing canopy, or is this a new canopy, I guess is the first question.
This is a new, it's part of the architectural enhancements, the addition of the canopy, which I believe is existing now.
So it's a glass top with kind of the spider fitting, and over the kind of a tube, white flange type structure below it. So is this punching through the glass to pop up?
Yes, I don't know if Dustin, you have the ability to speak. He's a little more familiar with the coordination, but essentially, the tube support had to be coordinated through the glass to accommodate surface to mount the letters to, since it is a glass top canopy.
Yeah, hi, my name is Dustin. With the design and build contractor. Basically, the GC is going to give us a notch out in the glass, and we're going to engineer a stem arm that will weld to the canopy. So they welded the receiving stem, and we're going to slot in our piece and run the wire, the electrical through into the building. This has already been actually engineered, but we didn't provide it in the planning submittal.
Okay, because on the elevation drawing on the page, it looks like it's yeah, it just looks like a whole different canopy. So I'm curious how it's all going to get coordinated, and the single stem attached. I did not really look to see if there is a beam down the middle where this would attach, but Emily, if you could coordinate that so it actually installs as presented. The other question, this one is about the monument sign. Emily, if you could go to the Lytton monument sign slide. Going by the site, it looks like a pretty tall planter, and I think the intent is, yeah, that one. So it looks like the intent is to orient south, which was not how I read it on the plan, but the elevation renders it that way. And that planter that it's sitting on top of, I mean, it felt quite tall, and in the render, in this image, it doesn't look quite so, but basically what you're saying in your drawing as the grade line on page 8 is actually the up the top of the stairs, correct? Not street level.
Exactly. The intention is both signs have a similar presence, and since this one's on a raised wall, that's slightly shorter.
Okay, and if I go to the same thing on the other project, on the 525 project, that render looks like it's on the ground, but the drawing, and because of the fence, I couldn't see if there's a raised planter or anything there, but on the drawing, it's indicated like it's on a planter as well.
So yeah, this one is, as a part of the architectural enhancement, there are planters being implemented. We just didn't have any renderings of the side of the property, and at the time of design, we just had the existing previous conditions to work with. But it'll be a lower planter essentially.
Okay, so is the height that you're proposing of 96 inches, and it says from grade, is that from the pavement grade or top of the new planter?
I believe
of
that's
planter.
top. Yeah, top of.
The top of planter.
Top of new planter, so the sign itself will be taller than 96 inches from people walking by. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
All right, I'll leave it to just questions instead of comments for right now.
Board Member Adcock, if I could break in,
Yeah.
I took a photo recently of that planter on 530 Lytton. The
Right.
current planter is approximately 48 inches above
Yeah,
the
it's quite
sidewalk.
tall. Yeah,
It was recently rebuilt 2 or 3
I
years ago.
see. It's taller than what the render
Their
shows.
photos just from a version of this building.
I see.
There's been constant work going on in this building for the past decade, it seems.
Okay,
But just for the record, I don't want to share the photo, but that planter is about 2 feet higher than is shown on the rendering right now.
so the overall sign will be 71 inch plus 4
You
feet.
might verify that in your questions to the
Right.
applicant.
Yeah, okay. So is that correct, that the planter, the top of, yeah, this sign, sorry, if you could go back to the Lytton one. So 71 inches is about 6'10", almost 6 feet, right? Yes, 72 is 6
Correct.
feet. So it'll be 10 feet off of the sidewalk.
I think the rendering, as you see it, is pretty accurate to the height of the new planter. So, but yes, that's correct.
One, two. It looks lower than the new planter, at least in this view, but, okay. So my next question is about, this is just a minor question on your both signs to the parking, where it says welcome to and then the address. Just this is more of a design question in terms of hierarchy. Sorry, I keep trying to figure out, there on page 5. So exit and enter are the hierarchy, right? The bold things where you're trying to see. And then welcome to has more hierarchy than the address, which seems odd to me. I would, I mean, the instinct would be to make welcome to the font of the address and the other way around. So you're highlighting the address more than welcome to. And my last question is about back to the monument sign in terms of all of the tenants. First question is, are each one of those the panels removable and swappable? I assume yes, as the tenant may change,
Yes,
right?
that's correct. Yes.
And the font and size of where it says tenant, is that intended to be consistent no matter what individual tenants, their logo and their own font might be? So is it going to be per the tenant or per this sign standard?
The intention is to have the branded font, but not the full logo, right? Since there's not enough space for kind of the proportions of a typical logo. So essentially, if they had a word mark in their branded font, standardizing the cap height to fit within that area.
So it's standardized cap height, but say like, my company, we use, let's just say we use Garamond, that would be the font, not Roboto condensed. All right.
Right, and in white.
Okay, so there'd be a little bit of standardization, but the fonts would all be different. So I think we'll discuss that separately within our, the board, but that's the rest, that's the end of my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Board Member Chen.
Thank you for your presentation. Actually, I have a follow-up question on the monument sign for both of them. So actually, maybe it's a question to the staff. We see the existing and the proposed are much narrower than the existing. So I want to know for the tenant's name, is there like a minimum requirement for the letter size, like how tall it need to be? Because, okay.
The zoning code gives a maximum for that area to be. And it's 1.5 square feet, yeah. But I was gonna pull up, just the definition of directory sign, if that's helpful.
So it's not like what we require, like for the address number, it need to be at least like 6 inches tall, something like that for the letter, or?
No, there's no
Okay.
minimum size like that.
And another question is for the for 525, the parking blade sign. It seems like it's mounted on top of the retaining wall. So I want to know the distance from the bottom of the sign to the street level. 525.
Well, the 525 is the freestanding one and the 530 Lytton is the blade one. Can you just clarify?
Yeah, I think it's the freestanding one, and based on the rendering and on sheet page number 20, it is on top. Okay, I think I find the number. Okay.
Yeah, so page 20 shows it being 12 feet from the sidewalk level to the top of the freestanding sign.
Okay, and for the other one, the 530, the bottom of the sign would be how tall it is from? Okay, it's 99.
It's showing 99 inches to the bottom and 141 inches to the top.
Okay, thank you.
Could you, staff, could we clarify, when you're talking about the height of a sign, if it's mounted on top of something, say a planter or a wall, is the height considered from the grade level, the surface a person is standing on, or from the top of the surface it's mounted on? In the case of these planters, it seems to me in both cases, the sign height is higher actually from the grade.
So usually when we're looking at height, we would go a couple feet out from the object and then measure down to the ground. But I believe these freestanding signs, if you can show them, Emily, there are a few feet of planter around these signs. And so we would be measuring from that planter level.
Are the planters that are out there now, the planters that are going to be there in the
And
future?
actually, I guess, sorry, let me clarify, because some of these are right at the edge of the planter So that's where we would be measuring at the sidewalk height, whereas the directory sign has some surrounding planter. And so we would mark that one as different. Yeah, if we go to the directory sign,
Yeah,
yeah, I think I'm looking at the other I was thinking about the other address. Yeah, so this one here has a planter around it, where we would be measuring from the planter height.
So
It's
you'd
hard
measure
to
the
tell,
530 from the top of the planter.
but according to the plan diagram, it goes right to the edge of the planter on one side. So is it what governs, like if, like towards the building, obviously, there's a lot more space, but like if the planter is pretty much level with that patio or the raised whatever, versus on the other side, it's right up against the street.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I have a tough time with that definition. It
Yeah.
seems too loose to me.
Yeah. Like is there a set number that would help define where the grade is measured?
Generally 5 feet away is where we're
Yeah, that's what
measuring.
the-
So actually
Generally,
these,
the code says 5 feet, and then you measure height of buildings, structures, things like that. But admittedly, our sign code is vague on some of these items, so that's why we're struggling with this.
And to clarify on the site plan, it's showing the existing sign as being at the edge of the planter and the new sign is the orange marking. So it's oriented the way that it's shown in the rendering. I can zoom in on what.
Yeah, the entire planter at 530 is about 5 feet deep. So, and the planter for 525, the renderings show the sign from the sidewalk grade.
Yeah, I don't think there's a planter there.
And the applicant indicated the planter is going to be there. Right now, it's all fenced off.
I think it's currently being built. I think they just poured it not too recently.
The approved plans for that doesn't show a planter in that area either.
Yeah, can you zoom in on that corner?
This is the existing grading plan on this. If you go to the, I think it was, you had a sheet before, after. Yeah, there we go. Those
Yeah,
plans.
so it's that upper the square that's right at that intersection, the upper square on the bottom right. The plan.
So those planters are all in the order of 4 feet square, something like that.
Looks to be it.
So, okay, I think we've got to the bottom of understanding what's there. Emily, one other question regarding the code. I thought we had a thing called a monument sign in our sign code that was different than a directory sign. Is that the case? Am I misremembering that?
we do have freestanding signs, which we also call monument signs, yes.
And what is the size and height limitation by the code for freestanding signs like that? Is it 8 feet or is it less than that?
In this type of area, it would be a 5 foot maximum.
5 foot maximum. And is there an area width? There must be something. It's the total size of the sign. How big can it be?
It
There's
depends on the frontage of the building.
Okay, so then question to you, why is it that we're deciding that these are directional signs, not freestanding, what I call monument signs, the two tall ones?
Because as I had pulled up earlier, the definition of a directory sign is the list of the businesses in the building.
I see, so by putting the name of the occupants, the name of the businesses, it makes it directory?
It's functioning as a directory sign for the tenants of the building.
On plan page 6, it calls it primary monument. I think we have some semantics issue here as well.
Yes, so when projects come into the city, staff has to look at them and figure out, where they fit into the code. So we're not looking at the plan set to, sort of direct us in that way. But I think this is a good question for staff and the ARB to discuss because the code is not 100% clear. I think staff made, a decent call in calling this a directory sign, because when you read the code, it does talk about directory signs may be erected displaying the names of the occupants of the building who are engaged in a particular profession, et cetera. And it gives, there's extra sizes. Okay, great. So Emily's got the language up here for directory signs, is that first paragraph there. So this sign does seem to fit into that definition. At the same time, I agree that most other times we have called this a freestanding monument sign. And we've even had on Park Boulevard, we've had multiple tenants on a freestanding sign and still called it freestanding. So this is an area where we can talk it through.
When was the last time this code was updated or reviewed whatsoever? The language seems
It has been a
old.
long, long time, and it will continue to be a long, long time because there are First Amendment issues, which is why we don't want to redo this code.
Thank you. Go ahead, Board Member Hirsch with the question.
Yeah, what happens with the monument sign, I guess it's called, then if there are many more tenants, if there's really only shown with 4 tenants? What happens if there are 8 tenants or?
I mean, if the applicant wants to respond to that, they can, but the sign allows for the 4 tenant names.
Which is the present number of tenants in the building, or what? How is that determined?
This is based on the client and ownership's delineation of required and per the lease agreement, who had rights essentially to representation on exterior signage, based on, I believe, the previous signage and or previous lease agreements.
Yeah, whereas 525 has 6 tenant spaces, I believe.
Yes, if they wanted additional tenants, they would need to come back for additional approvals.
Does that satisfy your question, Board Member Hirsch? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on to comments from the Board of
Can I ask a
Supervisors.
follow-up question on that, please?
You may. Go
Thank
ahead.
you.
One more question, please.
On that monument sign, I'm looking at 525, or not monument, freestanding sign on 525. It has 6 rows of text that says tenant and a blank. And I just heard that you have 6 tenants now and you have a space to add a 7th. So just follow-up question for Jody first is, if they put a 7th tenant there and use that last space, I assume they don't have to come back for that review if they use that bottom slot.
We
And-
would consider,
Yeah.
we would consider the spaces that say tenant to be the available sign slots.
So 6 of them, not 7. I'm seeing another difference there versus on the plan where there's a 6 rows and a blank at the top and blank at the bottom versus on page 8, there's only a blank at the bottom. There we go. So just a clarification on that. Is there space for potential 10 or potential 6 or 7? And if there's no tenant, and this is more for us to discuss as well, is should that bottom panel basically look like a blank or look like the rest of the frame? And for the applicant, do you have a design intent on that?
Yeah, I can answer the design intent. The isometric view is produced before the final elevation, so there's some slight proportion differences. So that's why there's a gap at the top and bottom on that view. For the elevation view we're looking at now, the intention was to leave it essentially with the maximum square footage allowance per tenant, and then raise them up as much as possible, in case there's any low-lying grass or other elements in the planter. So we wanted to make sure that there was little slight tolerance and a gap below. So the intention wasn't to add a seventh. It's just to give some additional space and also the coordination for where that curved element you can see on the side view. There's a curved detail meets the tenant panel. So there's some kind of tricky construction where we wanted to give some tolerance and allowance.
So on that, it would be the black umber material on the blank, not the day-night acrylic. Am I reading that correct?
Yeah, correct. So that curved base, as well as it appears a bit darker just because we're trying to illustrate that it's in shadowed a little bit, but essentially the entire facade of the sign would be that same color, including the tenant panels.
I'm more confused now. Is it C1 material or M2 material?
C1 is black. Umber.
And
Is
M2
M2 is
day-night
day-night.
acrylic.
So the day-night acrylic only occurs on the car coming
I see.
element of
Okay.
the blade parking blades. The rest of it's just the white acrylic vinyl and the dark gray or black umber paint.
Thank you.
You're done with your questions. Okay, let's hear your comments then, Board Member Adcock.
All right, I'll go to comments. So I'll start with, I think I mentioned it earlier too, the welcome to seems odd on the parking to be louder than the address itself. I think graphically it would be just as successful if you flipped the font and the text bold versus not bold on the parking sign. As far as the height of the signs relative to the sidewalk, I'm concerned the design is not addressing the pedestrian experience. Because if it's 10 feet tall on top of a 4-foot planter, it is a much more ominous thing than a 6-foot thing next to you as you walk. So we can discuss that on the board, but that's my comment on just the scale of the sign seems rather large. I know the buildings are large, but for the pedestrian experience, it seems quite overpowering.
Board Member Adcock, let's be clear. You're
yeah.
talking about the monument, I'll call it the monument sign on 525.
Right.
That's sign A as they address it in their package?
Yes, and equally for the same sign A on Lytton.
Yeah, let's refer to these consistently. So 525A, I'm calling it. And 530C, is that the one on?
A as well on 530.
They're both A.
Okay, so on both of those, you're suggesting that they're too tall?
Yes.
Okay, continue, please. Thank you.
In terms of the tenant name on the labels, I know they have this, I just wanted some clarification first before I comment. The font size requirement is for the square footage of the text itself or square footage of the panel. I think it's the panel, correct?
The 1.5 square feet is for the sign area.
Right. So the text could fill the whole thing or be smaller.
Yes, and really the square footage is combined, so it's more about the total sign area, how they break it up. You could break it up any way you wanted.
In the past, we've seen you delineate sign area by taking a rectangular or other normal shape to the extreme perimeters of the font, of the content of the sign, not the full area. Is that fair to say? So there's a 7-inch high plaque that the tenant's name is on. The sign area is considered 7 inches tall or just the height of the typeface tall?
The entire sign is the sign area. The whole entire sign, anything above grade is a sign.
I see.
So down in the weeds of it, sorry, Peter. So it says 1.5 square feet per business name is allowed. That's the size of the panel not the size of square footage of the font within.
We
the panel.
don't regulate the size of the tenant panel. We can in this particular project, but the code does not do that. The code regulates the size of the entire sign. There happens to be for directory signs, there happens to be an allowance that says 4 square feet plus 1.5 square feet per tenant. So for 525, a standard directory sign, they could do 13 square feet with 6 tenant names. But it's the 13 square feet that the code regulates.
So if they just said they have not 6, but 10 tenants, it just makes their whole sign bigger because they add more tenants to the sign area.
For directory signs, the code says you can add 1.5 square feet per tenant.
And that's the overall sign, not the font. So they could.
That's the overall
Okay.
sign.
So you're just adding together all these various numbers to come up with the whole sign. Okay.
Yeah, so the 525 directory sign as proposed, the code would allow 13 square feet. And they are proposing 20 square feet. So that's why we're here, for a master sign program and sign exceptions.
Okay.
Incredible. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So
And similar on the 530, which the code for the directory sign, the code would allow 10 square feet and they're proposing 14.8.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, my comment on that is, it looks nice and organized with it as tenant text on the rendering and as individual businesses. And of course, they want to have their identity out there, that there's the 1.5 square feet just by their design is kind of limited anyway, but like have some guidance on, percentage of text fill on the panel. And I don't know if that's something we can regulate, that somebody can go edge to edge with the text and have a pretty large, big, bold, "We are here," versus the next tenant with a long name but smaller font is, in that well-organized looking thing could be quite all over the place. So that's my comment on how we might at least provide some guidance on individual tenants' identity within this larger panel.
So they are asking for a master sign program, which would allow you to add those details.
Thank you. That's it on my comments for right now.
Thank you, Board Member Adcock. Board Member Chen, would you care to go next, please?
Sure. Thanks again for your application, and I think I agree for the parking, for the overhead parking sign. I agree with what Board Member Adcock just mentioned. I would suggest to switch the size between welcome and the address name because it is more important and more directional to show the address name much larger. And for the monument sign, the primary monument sign, I think, to me, I think 525 based on the location, it's more towards the inside of the plaza area, and I think that the size and the height is okay. But for the 530, I have the similar concern about it would be too tall when the size of sign standing on the 4-foot tall planter, because it is just too close to the sidewalk. And for the parking sign, the blade sign and the freestanding sign, I think for the 525, it looks taller, and I would suggest that somehow it could be lower. It would be appreciated. And for the wall sign, actually, I forgot to ask a question to the staff. So for the wall, because it doesn't meet the code because it extends beyond the wall. So based on the code, is there a requirement like for the wall, does it include both the building wall and the retaining wall?
So the code doesn't anticipate retaining walls being where the signs are located. So we do think that when we're looking at wall signs, it's important for a wall sign to not be exceeding the height of the wall of the building. But since this is a retaining wall, that an exception could be appropriate to exceed the height of the retaining wall.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and
Board Member Chen, you're referring to the sign C on 530
yeah,
or sign, just want to, there's so many of these, want to keep it clear.
yeah, it should be the property ID sign C.
So sign C
Sign
for 530.
yeah, mounted
And
on
and your
the.
comment is that it should or should not be allowed to exceed the height of that?
Well,
the height of it.
first, I just want to clarify
Okay,
the code requirement, but yeah, I think in this location and where it is located, I think it is acceptable to exceed above the wall.
you're okay with it to be
Yeah.
high?
That's all for now.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Hirsch.
On the slightly disagree with my fellow board members here on the sign that is into the parking. My feeling is that the welcome to should be the same text and size, as so it reads as one message rather than two messages. I think that it's appropriate to choose one or the other, but I think I would probably prefer that it, I don't have too much of a preference as to which text size, except that the enter and exit, I think, are clear enough in size. And of course, everybody knows which side of the entry you should be on. But the center sign should really be the same. I think it should be the same text, and maybe then it should really be the upper one. Makes more sense. Then there's only two kind of varieties of sign for that. I'm concerned about that 525, the sign that is, sorry, let me get it in front of me here. 525. The wall sign. Looks huge, and it's the side of the building, not the front of the building.
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes.
the 525 sign, when you say the wall sign, which one are
Yes,
you?
I'm talking about the one we were talking about, with the on page 15, it's the C sign.
So we're talking 525C,
Mhm,
just to keep track of it all.
mhm.
Yes, okay, what about it?
Well, it seems overscaled to
Seems
me.
huge.
Huge.
So use that word then.
Yes, huge. I'm bothered by that, especially it's the side street, it's not the prime elevation of the building. It is closer to Lytton, actually, this wall, right? Yes, of course, it's closer to Lytton because that's 525. I mean, 525 is on Lytton. It's closer to that end of the street. Is it necessary to have that sign there at all? I
Okay.
mean, it's a huge sign and it's on a side street, and you would get to the corner and you would see the sign that's in the front of the building. I wonder if other board members sort of think that that's an unnecessary sign.
That's a good question.
Especially because of the size of it. The other sign, I think there's some very good questions that the fellow board members have raised, and I go along with most of those, but those are the ones that, those are the two that bother me. The high sign that's in the courtyard also is out of scale. And I don't know what's the answer to that. I don't know how to consider reducing it in scale.
If I could just add something.
No, if you could hold on, please. I'm going to let Board Member Hirsch finish his comments. Thank you.
That's it.
Those are your comments?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. To the applicant, we'll come back to you with questions as we need to, if you could wait, please. So I'm going to follow on everyone's comments then. I'm going to say, I think everyone, I believe, feels this. This is a very nicely designed package of signs. It does fit the design of the building, and it's a definite improvement to what's there. So we greatly appreciate your clever, careful, thoughtful consistency with the design of these signs. I also think, however, that your packet is maybe not entirely representative accurately of what's there. The height of the planters, for example, it seems to me that it's just not fully represented. So I'm concerned about that because it's important to get that right. I have a question for staff regarding the idea of us switching the size of fonts on a message. Does that, it seems to me that gets into the content of the sign, the message rather than the design. And I don't want to, I agree with what Board Member Adcock is saying. If I were designing this, I would flip the fonts, but I'm not sure if it's within our purview to make that kind of recommendation. Do you have an opinion on that?
Oh, you're talking about the welcome sign.
The welcome to and the address. I would think that's up to the firm, the person, the owner to decide.
That would be regulating the content. So I would agree with you that we couldn't require it. But I think the ARB is making a good suggestion.
Yeah, so I'd like to be clear with my colleagues. I think we can make that suggestion, but I would think the applicant ultimately has that decision making in that one.
I think separately though, the size of the tenant names is just the size of the lettering. And so that's a different matter that the ARB could regulate.
Thank you, absolutely. So I don't want to get into whether it's a directional sign or a monument sign, but to me, these signs are too big. The sign 525 C, the long one on top of the wall, really should not exceed the height of the wall. To me, that's pretty basic. Otherwise, it's not a wall sign, it's a monument sign. It's some other kind of sign, and then the height gets bigger. But in this case, it's just too overscaled for the nature of the traffic you have going by. This is not a highway. These are small streets, primarily pedestrian traffic going by, and these are enormous signs. So I think 525C needs to be no more than the height of that wall, and it should just be scaled down in general. It's probably 50% too large for what's necessary. I think the two, what I'll call monument signs, the pretty tall ones, it's signs A, 525A and 530A are just too tall. Again, in my mind, they should be the scale of a person, a pedestrian scale. That's what we've enforced in the past, that you're in a downtown pedestrian environment, the signs should not be taller than people are. I think that they're intentionally trying to make it bigger to get attention to traffic, and that's misunderstanding the nature of downtown or the nature of downtown that we want. That's why this is in front of us. So to me, the sign should not be more than 6 feet from the sidewalk, from the surface pedestrians stand on. I would agree that staff could use some judgment if there's a large planter or something that sets it back some. Maybe there's a little bit of latitude there, but I don't see that in these cases. Certainly the one at 525 on University Avenue. I respectfully disagree, Board Member Chen, that it's a busy street, but it's a busy pedestrian street. Traffic can't go faster than 15 miles an hour on that street. There's always layers of people on the sidewalk and people parking before you get to the street. That street was even closed during the pandemic. And to have a sign that's effectively I'd say maybe 8 feet high off the ground. It's a 6-foot sign plus 2 feet of planter, say, is too much. So I would like to see the application come back with proper height and positioning for these planters, and then to have the signs reduced in size, perhaps even made more horizontal to be of a pedestrian scale. So
And if I may add to the I forget, it's the C, the wall sign, just for us to consider, what is it for, right? Is it because they're for both properties, they're on the street that's not the street name of what the parking's for? Like, for instance, the university one is on Cowper and the Linton one is on Tasso. Right. So it's, my first read was it's trying to indicate that this parking garage is for people coming to 525, obviously, University. But it also says that above, at the entrance of the garage too, welcome to this address, right? So, so the counter argument, like I'm seeing, from the applicant side, it's because you're trying to say this garage is for going to this address. But you're also saying that above the entrance to the garage itself. So it's kind of a secondary and therefore makes our, supports our argument that it's too big. It's not trying to see from the highway that this garage is for 525 University.
Because of the height of the retaining walls, there's concern that you don't see that sign until you're almost past it.
Right. So it can still be on par with the retaining wall height, maybe a tad taller. It does not need to be 16 inches tall. These 16-inch tall signs are to be seen from quite far away, not as you're about to enter the garage. So it just seems quite overscaled. But also, like looking at page 13, even how you're proposing to attach this sign shows a wall all the way up and down versus the renderings show it flying up above, right?
There is a wall there. Sorry.
Right, but in your renders, it shows it being above the height of the wall.
That's because
Hold on one second, please. Would you like to get the applicant to address that question, Board Member Adcock?
No, I think it is pretty clear on the drawings where on the elevation, sorry, I keep trying to, so right here on page 15, where it shows that, 60% of the sign is above the retaining wall, and there's guardrail at the landscaping behind it versus the detail that shows it fully attached on page 13, all the way up and down.
Okay, let's give the applicant a chance to
Yeah, go
confirm
ahead.
that for us. Okay, so to the applicant, please, if you could address the fact, how is that sign 525 and 530C mounted to the wall? Detail 4 on sheet 13 clearly shows it mounted to a wall taller than the sign. Is that the case?
so on page 15, 525 University for type C, I guess you would have to show a elevation without the sign, because the retaining wall has this inset wall that pops up, which is why we decided to cover that portion of the wall entirely with the 525 sign. So it is actually attached no higher than the retaining wall. It's just another wall that's set back up. So it's hard to see because we don't show the raw elevation.
So
it is actually.
So, but if you could answer the question, please, is detail 4 on sheet 13 correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So the wall recess you're just talking about is or is not shown on that detail then?
Well, I guess we show the wall going up a little higher, but the wall and the sign are exactly the same height. So it would have to be, it shows it going up a little higher. Yeah, there it is.
Okay, well, thanks for clarifying that. So I agree with Board Member Adcock. I think this is at best unclear. And I think, okay, this photo is helpful to see the situation, but is that really the height? That's not what's shown in the elevation at all. The elevation shows an iron railing behind it. And okay, colleagues, these drawings are just not consistent and clear.
The railing's not there yet in that photo.
Yet
or intended to be there? Staff, what's?
Yeah, so we're working with the materials the architect provided us with, so we don't have access to updated renderings of every condition. So we've had to piecemeal based on previous conditions to render and try to get as close
Okay,
as
if you could
possible.
please not speak unless we ask you questions. Thank you.
As a part of the prior planning entitlement, there were locations identified where the railing did not meet OSHA standards, and so railings have been added in those locations.
So, okay, look, I don't think we're satisfied that the packet we have in front of us being asked to recommend approval on is consistent or complete. And so we'd like to have it be that way. I think that doesn't, at least for me, doesn't change the basic idea that these signs are too big. And I think actually Board Member Hirsch's comment that it's probably not even necessary. That you have a welcome to with the building address. That's what you see. It's big enough that from a car, you see that quite clearly. And this is a very busy, narrow street that I think you just don't have that much traffic that justifies having such a large sign as being necessary, if nothing else. That's my opinion on that. I'm not sure, though, it's in our purview again to tell people where they can put their signs directly. If they want a sign there, they're entitled to a sign. And our question is more, does it fit with the character and is the scale and the size of it okay? So I would not feel comfortable insisting on not having a sign whatsoever, but the size of it is not right for me. I'd like to bring up one other thought when I don't know how you might regulate that or not, but that's on 525, the sign above the canopy that Board Member Adcock was asking about earlier. That's on packet sheet 10. As I understand this, these are illuminated letters that are 20 inches tall on a black background. Is that, or are they individual free cut letters? That's what they are. But my basic concern is that they're really tall and these are illuminated bright white. And next hearing, we're going to be facing bird safe and dark sky ordinance people looking at us about making things less bright. Does it need to be this bright? We're not on the Las Vegas Strip here. Are we really needing to have something this bright? And to staff, are we able to regulate that kind of thing? Or is this, I mean, I know the fire department wants building signs to be illuminated, but is this going beyond that? So maybe Jody or Emily, you could address that question. Is it okay for it to be this big and this illuminated?
The dark skies ordinance is still in draft form, so we don't have a final conclusion on that yet. But you're right to, start invoking that. We do, I'll have to take a look at downtown design guidelines, but I believe that it encourages halo illumination. So that's another option. Yeah, it is certainly something we can discuss.
So colleagues, to my eye, 20-inch tall, heavy font, bright letters are kind of bright.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know the light level and lumen output on these, but it still seems like at that size, 20 inches tall, 35 inches wide is going to be quite bright. I know across the street, 500 has a ginormous sign, but it's not illuminated. It's an aluminum sign. So size, we're not really commenting on well, we kind of are commenting on the size, but that size being illuminated is a compounded, very bright, almost neon feeling sign, which does not feel very appropriate. And I'm also just concerned about, like, this is lit up on a glass thing. Like, how is that wiring and how is that going to all work with, consistency with the look of the canopy as it is now, which is quite handsome.
Yeah, those questions go through my head. How do you get that junction box and wiring out there?
Well,
and again, the detail just isn't in the drawing package.
so I'm not quite understanding your comments on this because it seems to me the 525 in the elevation number 4 there is an appropriate scale for those letters. They're freestanding numerals, right? Is that what we're talking about?
I believe they're freestanding individual letters.
Individual
It says here,
numbers.
fabricated aluminum lettering internally illuminated.
Uh-huh.
So that's what this means.
Yeah.
I think you're correct.
I don't find those to be out of scale.
The scale in and of themselves on a building of this size is correct. You're right.
Yeah.
But the scale from a pedestrian perspective going along the sidewalk being brightly lit is a lot for University Avenue. The whole building is out of scale for University Avenue. That's part of the deal.
It's a total glass facade anyhow, right? So the interior would be lit as well.
Can we go back to street view on this?
What number is that then?
I think earlier you had the Google Street View. I think that's helpful.
It's behind a tree branch, but you can kind of see where it currently says 525.
If it's possible to see the elevation of the building itself, I think that'd be. So the canopy is a glass canopy right in the front over the center door there? And is that shown in this photo and it's just so thin that we can't see it, or it's being added?
It's being added, and I can try to find the right sheet of the 2021 plans that show that.
Well, seeing that elevation, I certainly agree with Board Member Hirsch that these letters are in scale with that. So I suppose also this building is just all glass, so the dark sky issue is governed by much more than just the building numbers. And there is no ordinance on the books about it. So I'm just bringing it up as something that the city has started to think about. Yeah, I don't want to push it further myself. I'm fine with that. So I think we're fairly in consensus that the signs A, the two monuments are just too big, and the signs C along the side of the street are too big. They should not. Sure.
Could we go back to those, the C sign?
Sure.
Because at least the one on, so it's just hard to find these things when you want to see them, but the one that's on University, I think is about 7 feet tall.
The C sign, the A one or the C one?
C.
The vertical monuments? Or
Yeah.
those are signs A, aren't they? So let's find one on the packet here. That's.
Yeah, sure.
On packet page 9 of 525 University is sign A, the vertical monument sign, with their rendering showing it
That's A.
96 inches above the sidewalk, basically. And this needs to be understood to actually be on a planter 2 feet or so higher, we're guessing. Is that right, Dave? Is that what you're talking about?
Is it really on the planter? It's not shown in the planter here.
Correct. The planter is not currently shown, but there is one under construction.
Should we allow the
Page 6, it shows it on.
page 6?
Yeah.
Yes, the plan shows a rectangle of some kind. That could be a pattern in the brick too. You just don't know.
On the other project package. Planter and I believe the applicant.
Yeah, they did. To the applicant, could you clarify once again, please? Sign 525A is mounted on top of a planter, and you don't know exactly how tall the planter is that correct?
That's correct. I believe it's 2 feet tall, but we did conform to the existing sign size, is why we made it that size.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And it's a much more attractive sign, there's no doubt. To my colleagues, the existing sign is tucked into the corner of a building where you're not really seeing the full size of it relative to pedestrians or anything. So
And it's also on the ground.
I think this sign should be 5 feet tall from the sidewalk, maybe 6 feet at the
No,
most.
7 feet seems reasonable to me.
It's now, David, it's now 8 plus
Oh, you're
2.
talking about added to the planter itself.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're saying it'll be 7 feet tall by the time it's on the planter.
Well, David, as I look at the drawing, page 9 on 525, the sign itself is,
On page 8, it gives you
Page
the height.
8.
It's 8 feet tall.
it's an 8-foot sign plus the 2-foot planter. So in
That-
reality, that sign is,
That's too damn tall.
that's
Excuse
what
me,
I'm
yeah.
saying, yeah.
Yeah, okay, because it isn't clear at all that, well, maybe it's clearer here, but no dimensions as to the planter. You know, so we wouldn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, they could get the same effective signage by making it a horizontal sign. They've got room to figure something out, and it would just make a big difference to pedestrians having it be less than 5 feet tall from the sidewalk. And you could get the tenants' names to your heart's content there. It's not the area of the sign that bothers me so much as the height.
Well, I saw this sign, the proposed sign is, it is tall, especially on the 2 feet tall planter, but considering the proportion of it, the height compared to the width, I think it's appropriate to the building. It's, if you make it more squat, more, it just foreign to this building and this sign serves as the directory sign, so it's stand there to allow people knows where to go and what's there. So
why don't we? You're right that the building is vertical.
It's a vertical building.
And on page 9, I mean, the project is making the argument for itself, what we are saying. Maybe it's 8 feet tall, but it's from the ground. Even 8, like looking at the render on page 9 right there, it feels tall. I walked by the site. I mean, the building, it's on the single story part of it. The center part is tall and vertical, and this also has very vertical elements. And I think a vertical sign is appropriate here, but I don't think it needs to be 2 feet plus 8.
That's right.
Maybe it's 2 feet plus even 5, 2 plus 5, it's still 7 feet. And the tenant names are at eye level or just under, very similar to what's there now. At 10 feet tall, the bottom tenant name is still pretty high up in the air, and the top tenant name is 8 feet up in the air. It is not a pedestrian experience.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that from the street, what you need to see and what you do see is the 525. You can't read the pedestrian names, the tenant names anyway. When you're on foot, the names are just too high. You want them down lower. And that's what fits the pedestrian experience. I could not support this sign being any taller than 6 feet above the sidewalk. Just want to give the applicant clear direction. And we probably should just come to consensus on that.
yeah, or does it really need to be on top of a planter, or it could be just sit on the street level?
Well, that's up to the applicant
Yeah,
to
right.
design how they like.
Yeah.
That's a good point, though.
Yeah, to be frank, I would rather see these signs somehow on the ground. You know, they seem to, they feel better to me that way.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm just, to me, it's
So-
paramount to keep it in scale with the
yeah.
pedestrians.
So I mean, I think we couldn't we say that we think that some of the locations of these signs, I would push for a sign that's 7 feet tall, by the way, from the ground level. That seems the total human scale to me. 8 feet's too much, 7 feet is appropriate. And that leaves plenty of room for the tenant signs to be at a reasonable level.
I recall last year us working through the hospital additions over at Stanford. We had a similar discussion about the directional signs, and we had similar resolution that we wanted it down to no more than the scale of a person.
Mhm.
And it was not 7 feet tall, David. They were down, I think, to 5. I think their staff was considering them to be monument signs, which are 5 feet high. And that's what the limitation landed.
7 feet, I'm sorry to argue for the 2 feet, but 7 feet seems reasonable to me for a sign that has the building
Okay.
number on it.
As I went around looking at this project, there's the All Saints Church on the corner of, it must be Hamilton and Waverly. And they have a very nice corner monument sign that's maybe 3 feet high, 3.5 feet. And then landscaped area. It's lovely and it's perfectly suitable for locating that structure. And I would think that that street is about the same traffic level. It's an equally large property and building. You just don't need to be so big to get the point across and to serve as a functioning sign.
I can disagree with you a little bit here. I think that this is really representing a larger building. You know, it represents a significant building. You know, there's a smaller addition to it, but it's a big facade when it's added together, everything that's there.
That's true.
And it's important to get a significant size on number of this building so that you really know you're there when you get to the front door.
Okay, so I think we're at the point where 6 to 7 feet is the range we're talking about. Board members Adcock and Chen, where do you stand on this? We need to come to closure and just give them
Yeah.
some direction.
I can agree with 7 feet, particularly because the 525 University in their current design is 31 inches tall, just the address part of it. If we push for it to be shorter, it'll probably be about 2 feet. And so the top of the tenant names will be about 5. Right, so it's kind of balancing what you're saying, Peter, of reading the tenant labels are at 5 feet level, and to your point, David, the address is a little bit higher than that and still would support the verticality of the sign relative to the look and feel of the building.
Okay, thanks.
But I'm sorry that they haven't really shown all of the landscape work here because that's affecting this, And I mean, if a planter were pulled back somehow so that you could get a freestanding sign, it would be simply a better solution. And there should have been some coordination there.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can work through these signs with some significant direct comments, and I'd like to see this continued to come back with a full packet
Yes,
regardless. But I just
absolutely.
want to be sure we give them clear instructions. So we're going to be looking for a motion to continue to a date uncertain, subject to getting the drawing packet complete. But let's just go through these signs that we have questions about. So I've heard 525 sign A. 2 board members are happy with the 7 feet. Board member Chen, how do you feel on that?
Well, actually, I'm okay with what they're proposed now, as long as they're not sitting on top of the planter. And I think if we have to lower it to 7 feet, then I agree with what board member Adcock just suggested. Maybe make the 31 inches shorter, maybe to 24 inches, so that all those tenants names could be higher and somewhere at the eye level, instead of you need to bend over and see all those tenants' name.
So a quick average of 6, 7, 7, and 8 puts us at 7 feet. Let's discuss the other monument sign on 530, the one that's in the planter that's taller. What is an appropriate size and height for that sign? So here, I think a horizontal sign would be more appropriate. And again, I'd like to see the signage no more than 6 feet above the sidewalk. Is there support for those restrictions though? This is.
Let's turn to the right.
Let's go on
page.
right page, yeah, well, it's well shown on page 9 too. Page 9 of the 530 drawing set. Shows sign A mounted on what I think was a planter there at one point, but is now taller.
Page 11.
I said page 9. Right. Yeah, page 10 shows the sign that I believe was there, which is horizontal. But I'm.
Are we talking about A or C now?
A.
All right.
I'd like us to close on, everyone felt sign A at 530 Lytton was too big. What size is appropriate?
Yeah, I would support that a horizontal one in this location is more appropriate. But meanwhile, maybe I also want to check with the applicant why they want to turn the sign facing another direction instead of as what existing showing there parallel to the pedestrian street.
Okay, so to the applicant, please, if you could address that question from board member Chen.
In order
Sure,
to, sorry, go ahead, Will.
Just the question of why it's vertical in this location.
Why it's oriented that way. To
Oh,
see,
the orientation.
yeah, for visibility on both directions. And I think the height is so we can put the tenant names.
Yeah, we wanted to keep a consistent program in the design. So since it is one campus, so keeping the directories the same kind of sign type and proportion. And then I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think if the wall's 4 foot tall here, if there was a 7 foot maximum, it wouldn't really be conducive. It seems like we would need to have 5 feet at the minimum height. So I'm just kind of thinking out loud on next steps and approach. But we did want to keep a consistent design across the campus. So that was the idea, and keeping the vertical in this corner. Also kind of a clean presence, and the orientation seemed to address the intersection better. And it's just due to the fact that people will know when to turn onto the street if it's oriented in this direction.
Okay, thanks for that answer. Board Member Chen, why don't you continue with what you were saying on that?
Well, yeah, I just want to continue saying, like, since for this corner of the site, the building is much lower, and also we can see the background, there are some horizontal lines going on there. So I think considering the 4 foot high planter wall, so I think a horizontal one in this location would be more appropriate, maybe to have 2 columns of tenant names on the sign. But in that case, I would suggest to turn the sign direction, the orientation to be as what it is now, instead of turning it this way, so that it goes along with the planter, the length of the planter.
That's a good point. If you make it horizontal, then it does need to reorient.
So board member, if I may, I think you had sent me a picture showing that the existing planter is about 2 feet taller, just so we keep that in mind.
Yes, I think that fact is important to have in the final presentation. The planter needs to be shown at its correct size. And I think that will affect the design of the sign.
Yeah, if I may add, I do support making this horizontal, both in response to the building behind it and the tall planter. And given the other sign type C, you have you've already done a design that's in a horizontal, but still staying with this sign family. So it doesn't, like, we're not asking for a whole different direction in design, but using that, the curve at the bottom and all, like you're doing for sign type C, I think it is totally appropriate to try to get this, like, we can still set the upper limit of 7 feet as to be consistent, to give them the leeway of how they do the 4 feet tall plus the sign. If they put it on top, that gives them 3 feet of space to work on the horizontal version of this sign. They will need that vertical space still, given that 4 foot height of the planter. So I would suggest we're consistent with the max height for the monument / freestanding direction sign on both properties, but suggest that this one becomes horizontal. And if they want to maintain vertical, it would have to start from the sidewalk level to get that consistent look. So I don't want to drive their design so much as other than give guidance on the boundaries.
I think the actuality is, if you just limit the sign to 7 feet in height from the sidewalk, it has to be horizontal. We don't need to say that. Let them come to that conclusion. But to me, there is some sense to the consistency of that. And 7 feet high is what these signs need to be measured from the sidewalk. Board Member Hirsch, are you shaking your head? Okay.
I'm just totally, can we get back to that image that we just had? We're talking about the Lytton Street sign, correct? Yeah. I'm just look at that and say, it's a problem, because it's about how tall really is that wall? Close to 3 feet?
The planter is approximately 4 feet above the
4
sidewalk.
feet. Yeah. And so from the platform, the top, when you now see a horizontal sign sitting there 3 feet above that level, what will that look like? Not a very attractive
No,
scale.
you're right that it'll just really serve to block a view from that podia out to the street.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just the wrong place for a sign.
I mean, I think that this is correct, but I think maybe the scale of it has to be brought down a little bit. It's going to be rather incredibly tall feeling when you're standing on the street level. So I'm sort of bothered by that, but I really feel that a vertical sign is the right answer here too. Just because a horizontal sign is going to look like nothing.
Okay. I'm very comfortable just saying that the limit is 7 feet in height from the sidewalk. And let them resolve how it gets built.
7 feet? Well, I can't.
Look, I could put a 7-foot vertical sign on the 45-degree angle of that stairs, right in the middle of that handrail. Would look kind of cool. I don't know if they've thought about that, and I don't want to be designing it for them, but I think there are options. And probably the answer is the sign can't be on the planter because it's taller. I'll venture that the designers didn't know the size of the planter, and so they're equally surprised by this.
Yeah, the actual viewpoint that we're looking at here seems to be rather tall. We're looking at this from a high angle. I don't know how the picture was taken.
I think it was the previous planter. If you just count the steps, that planter is about 2.5 feet tall existing in the picture, but that's not what's there anymore, is what I understand.
Those planters have been built and rebuilt
Right.
pretty much continuously for the past. You remember the Dr. Susie and big weird plants they had in there for a while? It's been quite a thing. But look, where do we stand on this sign?
I still think it needs to be a vertical. Vertical.
So you've mentioned vertical. Board Member Chen says horizontal.
7 feet tall.
Board
They
Member
can
Adcock and I
decide.
say 7 feet. Can we just say 7 feet tall and let them decide for themselves the geometry, or do you want to just leave it vertical? We want to ask the applicant what they think they can do. To the applicant, can you help us out on this one? What do you think you can do? We're concerned about the size of the sign and about how it fits to the planter. What do you suggest?
I'm wondering if we could have, I'm just trying to think of the best way to quick approval. So we could have two options, one where we say keep it vertical and try to get it as small as possible while still serving its function. We could propose, I personally believe that a horizontal sign will be more unattractive and won't serve the direction of traffic we're trying to meet. So I would like to at least propose a vertical option if we can. I don't know if including options, Dustin, you disagree or think that we should. I don't know if it's typical to provide options. That's my thought on this sign specifically.
Yeah, maybe if we were to propose a couple of options for you guys to look at, it might help. But I also think that in that rendering, it does show it actually taller than we're proposing it. If you see relative to the lady walking by, it seems like a couple feet taller than her, but we're actually only proposing it to be, I think, 6 feet. So I just think it's giving us an incorrect view at that angle.
Okay.
So the 2021 plans do show that this planter is increased in height. In the Google Maps, you could see that the planter was below the height of the railing, which wasn't fitting with the 4-foot narrative. But in the image that is in the upper left-hand corner here, you can see that the top of the planter is higher than the height of the railing and likely as the 48 inches that the applicant originally said that planter height was. Yeah.
Well, okay, to
The
me,
designs don't just work together. Like this is beautiful. If you put the sign as design on top of it, it will be 10 feet tall. It just, they
Doesn't work.
don't work together.
Yeah. There's a directory sign on the wall of the building, isn't there? One with the names and addresses and what floor to go to, directions. Okay, colleagues, I'd like us just to say that this sign is limited to 7 feet in height from the sidewalk, and we'll leave it up to the applicant to propose a solution. We can put together an ad hoc committee if the applicant wants to get preliminary feedback in between. But I think it's fair to say that the consensus is mostly on the height of it. Let's clarify for staff, there was questions regarding not just the size, but the size of the address versus the tenants, because the address was limited to 4 feet and it's 7 square feet or something.
Yes, typically for a directory sign, the non-tenant area of that sign would be limited to 4 feet. And because they're putting the address there, they're proposing 7.4 feet as a sign exception.
Right, and the grounds for the sign exception could be that the whole building and property is so much larger that this is justified. And I haven't heard anyone disagreeing with that. Is that a fair statement that we're okay with those internal dimensions being different, the 7 square feet versus the 4, et cetera? On these signs, the A series signs. The last item on these signs was several comments regarding greater consistency or having consistency in the sign program regarding the tenant lettering. Is there some way to ensure consistency? Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm concerned about the lack of consistency. And I'm also concerned about the fact that you have tenants who are going to come and say, we have a logo and we'd like our logo on that panel. That's,
Sure.
it's a conflict that we,
Yeah. I think I heard the applicant say that the tenants would be allowed to use a different typeface, a different font, but no logos. It was just the name of their business. And I think that's something you can put in the sign program, right? It sounds like we're just asking for clarity on how that's done.
yeah,
Yeah.
really. I think that we should be shown what they're going to do.
Yeah, but Board Member Adcock, and you just made a good point that over time things change and we want the applicant to be able to make changes as they have new tenants.
Mhm.
But what are the parameters that you can do this?
Mhm.
Let's go to the sign C. That's the long one on the retaining wall. Again, I think everyone felt it was too large, huge, as Board Member Hirsch and I called it. And again, I feel that it should not be taller than the wall it's mounted on.
The applicant's point.
So, and
the picture
just to
of the
clarify on this one, that we did see in the Google image that there is actually a wall behind this.
Right.
They just happen to be covering the entire wall, which is why you didn't see it in the plan set.
Yeah, so if there is a solid wall behind it, then I'm okay with it being as tall as that wall, but no taller. What is the parameter on the size of it? Didn't you say it was also larger than the code would allow?
It's on a retaining wall, and so that would be, it is a wall sign on a retaining wall. We calculate the size of the retaining wall, and that's the size that they're allowed. And I think this is, where do we have it?
On packet page 18, it says exceeds beyond the wall height, where exceedance beyond the wall height is not allowed. But I think what we are hearing, and based on the picture, is it is not exceeding the wall height.
But just the area of the sign.
But
It
there's
just
no
feels-
note here about area.
In addition to the height, it just feels too large.
Yeah. Yeah, the fonts are too big, everything's.
And how do we ask them to make, we just put a size on it, a vertical height or something?
I have a suggestion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Float the letters on the wall and float the numerals and letters on the wall and not have it as a big block of.
That would go a long way towards reducing the apparent bulk of it.
The only thing that bothers me there is there's not too much character to the letters. In other situations, the letters are fine. You know, when they're on a monument sign or a vertical, they seem to look fine. But when they're likely to be, if they are put on the wall, as my suggestion, there ought to be interesting letters.
Yeah, but that's, while I agree with you on that one, it's asking them to go back to the drawing board
Can't
and
do
not
it.
use the sign, like the master sign design with
Right.
little
Exactly.
curves from the building
Yes, I agree with
picked
you.
up. So I think I suggest that we have a both height and overall sign limit on this, and it's up to them if they want to go back to, pin mounted letters and how they want to do it. It's just the font of 16 inches on a pedestrian street is, it's just too much at 8 feet too tall. If we go back to that picture minus the sign, it doesn't seem to need that whole wall filled with sign.
Well, just thinking about the location of both of the signs, 525 and 530. So both of them are next to the parking garage entrance. So I'm not sure whether the design intent is also to let the visitors to be easier finding the entrance, that because that's where it is located at. And also for the height of it, so because there are lots of street parkings along these two streets, so for the drivers to easy to see the letters, to see the address, it has to be above the car and easy to see. So I think the height of it, the bottom of the letter and the top goes 8 feet. I think it's kind of appropriate in this location, considering the purpose of this sign here. But again, I'm not sure whether it is a wayfinding that is the design intent in this location to put the address there.
Board Member Chen, you've already seen the 7-foot tall vertical signs in either corner identifying that this is 525 and 530. So
But
the address is, by the time you're coming close to this, you know which building it is.
well, maybe just based on my personal experience, sometimes even though I know I'm close to this building, but it's still, I don't want to miss the garage entrance. So that is more like a sign, remind me, okay, go here.
So this image in front of us here is taken from the top of one of those Google cars. So it's about 4 or 5 feet high.
Mhm.
The driver's vision is about 2 feet lower than this.
Right.
I'll maintain that you'll still see it mounted on that wall at that height.
So I think we can stick with the guidance per the code. Sorry, per the code, where wall property ID. So you've noted extends beyond the wall height where exceedance beyond the wall height is not allowed. So, but it, as shown here, it is not exceeding the wall height. So we can stay with, if that wall is 8 foot 2 off the ground, and to Board Member Chen's point, it can be up there. But as far as font size is concerned, like they're proposing 9.5 inch tall for the bold font on the parking, right? So if that's visible for cars coming by, this one surely does not need to be 16 inches tall, right? But I'm using their own drawings for the argument.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
could support saying that the sign is limited by no more than 12-inch high fonts
Yeah.
and no more than 40 square feet of area. Right now,
Yeah.
it's 56.
Yeah.
Just to try to scale it back
Yeah.
some.
Yeah.
Just to give a quantitative number for the applicant. Does that seem reasonable to everyone? Okay, everyone's shaking their heads. So 12-inch tall font maximum, 40 square feet maximum, and it has to be within the height of the wall. Board Member Chen, you're going to be able to support that?
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
shook my head.
Okay, just checking, right? Okay, the other signs, I don't think I heard any questions about.
Just to be consistent, we should say the same about page sign type C for Lytton, which is on page 11,
The comment we just made is for both 525 and 530C.
right?
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion. Are we,
Do you think this sign is too tall, or you're all good with that? The parking blade.
just turn on your microphone.
Uh,
Board Member
yeah,
Chen, you're talking on which page? are
The
you on?
525 page 21, the parking, the freestanding parking sign. Does everybody
Oh,
look okay, or it's kind of tall from the street level? it's projected from the pedestrian way and it's up tall there.
What is the top of the sign height above the sidewalk? Yeah.
So top of the sign, as noted on page 20, is 12 feet tall. And below, and the sign itself is, 3.5 feet, so 8'6" to the bottom of the sign, right? And in the rendering on the next page, if you consider those walking people around 6 feet tall, it's not rendered at 8.5 feet tall. It's more like maybe 7. Now, just for consistency with, code clearances and all, 7.6 to the bottom seems to make sense versus 8.6 if we want to suggest getting it just a little bit lower and actually consistent with their rendering versus the page 20 drawing.
I could support lowering this sign, sure. I think it's a good catch, Board Member Chen, and it just looks a little bit too tall. I rather like the blade sign sort of style on the pole. I think it's good, and I think that the drive entrance does need a little more signage. It's pedestrians aren't always aware that there's a driveway there, even though the beeper is always going off.
I particularly appreciate the car coming light up portion of it.
But you're suggesting we make it maybe a foot lower?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Board Member Hirsch, can you support that? The top is 12 feet off the street now.
8'6" currently, 8'6", and we're suggesting bring it to 7'6". For Jody and Emily, are there any concerns that we're not thinking of, whether it's, well, pedestrians are not going to be quite, hitting 7'6", but any like fire, life safety or anything in terms of street access that we are not thinking about?
We'll need to confirm with Public Works what that minimum height is.
Okay, thank you.
How are we making our motion that we recommend, or we'd like to see that be reconsidered and be checked with various other city agencies about sidewalk clearances? Yeah, the reality is you drive up in your car when it's this tall, when you get close, you don't see it because it's too high.
Right.
So.
On 19, and if this is an accurate drawing, it doesn't look bad to me where it is.
Well, but David, the drawing is from the top of that planter. It's.
Yes, yeah, you're
So
right.
next page, page 20 shows it with the planter.
Looking at the wrong one here.
The planter, just another minor note, the planter, according to page 20, says 61 inches tall,
I don't think it's that big.
5'1".
I don't think it's that tall.
Yeah, which on the rendered with the people does not look like 5 feet tall, maybe 4'6". So there's some quite a bit of inconsistency.
I'll bet
here
that
that's
planter's the same 4 feet as the rest of them around the plaza.
likely, yes.
So why don't we?
Here.
I guess
How
look
about
for
we
greater
suggest that, bottom of parking sign E shall be a minimum required above sidewalk. And should we add, suggest top of sign to be 11 feet tall?
Sure, you
Yeah.
can say that. Okay, any other comments about these signs? I'd like to get a motion.
I'm sorry to muddy the waters here.
No, go ahead, let's get it resolved.
Yeah, what are we looking at on page 20 on 525? The parking sign, it isn't a blade sign, it is in the line of the wall that you're facing there? Or is this?
No, it's a pole mounted blade sign, I think would be the most accurate way to determine. It's a blade sign. It sticks out from the something, but it sticks out from a pole.
It's a freestanding sign by the code.
But then it should be limited to 5 feet.
Oh,
Yeah, that's reflected in the attachment D. Well, no, because this is a directional sign.
Yeah.
So
where did,
the height exception is still included in,
Yeah, so
Attachment
that's what we're
D.
saying. We need the height
Yeah,
exception.
okay.
Well, certainly you do for this
Directional sign.
functionality.
Mhm.
Board Member Hirsch, what are you
I'm,
questioning?
I'm, I'm not understanding something here.
Okay, so let's get that straight.
Is this sign seen in elevation looking at the building itself and the wall of the building? Or is this sign facing as it would be a blade sign?
Let's look at page 21. Just go one page further in the packet, and there's a rendering of the sign in situ. Does that answer your question?
Alternatively, if you go to page 6, the little sign E, it's hard to see, but the little red line shows the orientation of the sign on Cowper Street.
The sign itself is perpendicular to the direction of traffic
Yep.
on Cowper.
Okay, if that's what it is.
Is that okay?
Okay.
Well, it needs to be that way to function as a
Right.
parking sign.
Uh-huh.
So we have,
But uh, again, that's fine if it sticks out as a blade sign. I think it has to be seen that way. you
Right,
know?
right.
I mean, if it's not,
And-
it's going to be wrong.
I think particularly it's intended for pedestrians walking by to also know that there are cars coming, because it's
That's
hard
right.
to see from those
Yeah.
giant retaining walls. So it has to be in that direction for the light up car coming.
Yeah.
Don't jump.
I may
forward.
have that automatic
Yeah,
bell system, which is
exactly.
critical.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna
I'm
move
sorry.
that.
Yeah, but just one other question.
Okay.
If we went back on 19, page 19 on 530,
530, page 19, okay.
we're looking at a sign for the name of the building here. Further on here. And that sign is on a low wall. Is that where that will be?
On 530, I believe it's a genuine blade sign mounted on.
No, I'm not talking about the parking sign at this point. I'm talking about the sign that you're seeing in the distance here.
That's the sign type C we've been talking about.
Sorry.
That's the sign type C we were talking about earlier?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes.
It's a horizontal sign of the address of that building, right?
That one, to be honest, in the rendering looks about the scale we're asking for.
Yeah.
I think the actual scale that's proposed is bigger than that.
Mhm.
The rendering is not fully accurate.
So in the other side of the building, the wall is higher, right? It goes up
Yes,
higher.
yes, the planters are different on both sides of the building.
Yeah. So
Different.
this is looking like it's extremely low as a sign. doesn't it?
Well, this is shown on the existing pre-construction wall height, but as proposed is on a taller, 4-foot tall versus the existing is in the order of 2.5 feet. And I think that's what's rendered here.
Does it look like 4 feet? That wall?
No, this looks like 2.5 feet and it's on the pre-construction wall versus post-construction wall, which is taller.
So item 1 in our motion is going to hopefully clarify all this when it comes back to us. So I'd like to move that we continue this project to a date uncertain, subject to the 7 conditions outlined in our motion on the screen. Can I get a second, please?
I'll second.
Any comments on that before we vote? If not, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Board Member Adcock,
Yes.
Board Member Chen,
Yes.
Chair Balte,
Yes.
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes.
motion carries 4-0.
Okay, it's almost 10:30. Let's take a break till 10:35. Give me enough time, everybody? Just a few minutes. Okay, we're off until 10:35. Okay, we're back on air. We're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the ARB's review of the draft annual report. Shodi, do we have a presentation for that, or?
I don't have a presentation, but I can share the actual document. Just 1 second.
Okay, colleagues, this is a document we've been all working on. I think everybody's contributed some various pieces. Staff has kindly written it up for us and placed all the images that we asked for. It's
Yes.
worth remembering this goes to City Council. What they see in their packet is effectively the same thing we're seeing in our packet. The photos are black and white at the size we're seeing. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. If we really want, we can look into potentially doing color, but it would be a special run. We may have to just email it to the council if you wanted them to see color. But this is the work plan as updated, and this is what's in your packet. We've updated the years of the work plan. We've updated the board members to be accurate. We've also added from the previous conversation, we've moved, high and low priorities. We've made those changes as you requested. And so you'll see in goal number 3, we've added California Avenue. For goal number 4, we have the roof terraces, riparian setbacks, things of that nature. And then when we get to, so I think that's, the changes on the work plan itself seem pretty straightforward. Maybe we can stop there and see if there's any questions.
Yeah. Actually, I was just going to say, if anybody has comments whatsoever on this, now is the time to speak, or else we should just move it on. But
Just a minor one on goal number 4. We've got at the top on the goal, parklet designs and streetscape designs. I just want to, the streetscape designs is not anywhere on our priorities if we are considering that. And also related to that, in timeline, we say spring, summer 2024. Unless I missed something, we haven't really talked about streetscape designs as something we're going to address this spring, summer.
this, I'm sorry, you're on packet page 42, project goal number 4.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I guess the question is, do we want to include streetscape designs on this description? And if so, should we put it on any priority?
Well, doesn't it say right here, project goal 4, the description to the right of it? The last word says and streetscape designs.
But it doesn't say anywhere on the bottom in terms of priority, high priority,
Oh,
low.
whether it's high or low priority.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Maybe we should identify that.
And also related to that in timeline, if we,
So we don't have parklets either. I mean, I think these are as they come up.
okay.
Didn't we just do that? We just.
Yeah, we
reduced-
Yes,
Did
yes.
parklet. So everything else we've discussed, roof terraces to some extent, but streetscape designs, I just want to make sure if we're committing to something, it has some priority and some note on the timeline.
Well,
portion.
So I think the goal itself is purposely meant to be generic, that the ARB wants to review these types of things. And for the streetscape one, we made it even more generic. We didn't put an actual street name.
Mhm.
And we're just saying that roof terraces, bird safe glass, and riparian setbacks, we know that those are high priorities.
Mhm.
The other items will come to you as needed,
Okay.
but it's not pending right this second.
What if we add under lower priority to monitor parklet and streetscape designs? Can we just add those words in?
Under low priority, you
Under low
said?
priority, to say to monitor, just to keep an eye on what's
Mhm.
being done.
Yeah.
Oh, look at you. I cannot spell this morning.
Okay, any other comments on the goals section of this? No? Board Member Hirsch, no? Okay, then reviewing this in parts, the next one is our annual report. Jody, do you have any introduction on that or?
Yes, so for the annual report, we did take out a few items from the list because they weren't finished quite yet. And then we do have, sorry, recommendations should go on the next page here. We didn't make any changes. We changed the numbering to sort of line up with the annual report. That's why there's a 2 here for objective standards. And then number 3, coordinated area plans. There's probably some language, looks like Peter had already made some changes to the San Antonio paragraph. And then we were potentially going to add a paragraph about Cal Ave because that was now on our priority list.
So
Is the green and red text here, that's different from what we're looking at on.
The yellow is the real difference. Let me take out the red. This was more notes than anything.
So the yellow is the text that I added the other day, right, Jody?
Yes.
And I think it was in response to a comment from you, Board Member Adcock, about the bicycle path or the whole area, not just San Antonio Avenue directly. But I did just change it to meet that. And Board Member Hirsch, were you the one who provided the comments on Encina Avenue, or did I do that as well? I want to make sure that meets what you were thinking about it.
I mean, it raises a lot of, and California Avenue as well. How do you deal with these issues? You know, I'd like my fellow board members to think about this a little bit because there are some areas of the city that I think require something called urban design. It's a larger scale way of thinking about things. And I don't know if it's not going to be a subject matter that's brought to us. How do we think about those ideas now? Long-range planning. Planning has long-range planning, but this is not exactly that, urban design. So Encina is Encinal is a potential project where let me just say, if you looked at that site, you would say what we looked at for a project there was a small section of the site and a 1-story, or excuse me, a 3-story small 10-unit kind of project. We shouldn't be talking about it in too much detail, except to think of it as what it does to that site, since we have it listed here. I could say you could imagine a site like that that had a more significant building on it. How should we be dealing with that? That's, should we mention it for some kind of urban design study?
Well, we're asking or recommending to council that they consider and creating a coordinated area plan for this area. Wouldn't that be what you're talking about? In the creation of a coordinated area plan, you would study what size of buildings are appropriate or what works best. And that would be an urban design project, right?
Okay.
You could say it's not Encina Avenue, but rather the area between El Camino and the railroad and Town and Country on the south and the Sutter Health on the north, Palo Alto Medical on the north. But I think that's the same thing. It's only
Except it gets rather big. What are we going to do when we take a large section like that? Just say this is already built up and there's not going to be any change here?
This came out of our looking at one project on that area and realizing that the whole street's going to face the same situation and it should be looked at together as a whole. And I think this, David, I think this paragraph pretty well says that.
Okay, so,
The question is whether we get council's attention on it.
well, council has already made up its mind about, for one, studying the downtown, right?
Right, but we're not, that's not here. We're talking about Encina Avenue.
Mhm.
And I think they're not aware that this is a situation where it would really benefit from a full plan.
Okay.
So that's the purpose of this annual report.
Mhm.
If I present it to council, I'll be sure to stress that this is one that's, sort of,
Mhm.
I'd call it low-hanging fruit.
Mhm.
It's an easy one to make a plan for the future.
Okay,
It's not going to be that controversial. It won't be that hard to do even.
good.
And
It should be there.
They should jump all over this one.
So let's see what else we've got on this.
We don't have any description on California Avenue.
Right.
Jody, is that because one of us didn't provide a write-up, or do we just not have anything else to add, or do we really mean for that to be here?
I did not see a write-up, but that could be on me as well.
It really ought to be.
And
mean,
what should it say? Because now we have to write it now or not have it. So I think you're the one, David, has been pushing for
Definitely
this.
pushing all of this, yeah.
So what should it say? Why should California have a coordinated area plan?
Oh, it's
In a
quite
sense.
clear. It's a mess,
No, this-
especially the
but-
Cambridge end of it.
Speak so she can type it up, so we put it in our
Mhm.
report. Anybody
Should
wanna-
have a coordinated area plan for certainly all of the parking lots. To develop a scope of future development.
David, that ship has sailed. I mean, California Avenue they're already working hard on the pedestrian thing. There's already some builder's remedy projects at the end where the market is.
On California Avenue?
Yeah, I think,
Yes.
I don't know that city council is going to take it up as a full urban design project in that whole area.
There is an 800 linear feet of parking lots on Cambridge.
Yeah, and they just put a bunch of money into long-term leases and the solar panels on top of those, which can't be changed easily. I mean, it's pretty fixed, all that stuff.
You're talking about on top of the garage?
Yeah. But okay, well, how should we phrase this, since we obviously put it in here, with the addition of AB?
Just to describe,
I'm adding things, so.
Beautiful, Jody. Do you agree with what you just wrote, David? Look at that on the screen. Thank you.
let's see, California Avenue, addition. What is AB 297?
So California Avenue, because it is so that within a half mile of a train station,
Okay.
the state
Mhm.
has said that parking's no longer required. So that's why I'm saying that area is ripe for development. There may be some better wording, but
Well, I'm not saying it's developed without parking. That's not going to be a great idea.
well, the state already overruled us on that.
On what?
Parking.
AB 2097 says
Is-
no parking is required within a half mile of a train station,
Every one of the train stations?
period. Yes. And well, the state goes beyond that, but for Palo Alto, it's just the 3 train stations.
Are you saying, excuse me, let me sort of work on the words a little bit here. You're saying there will be no parking in any of those areas?
The state has said the city cannot require parking within a half mile of a train station. And the law actually goes beyond that. It talks about buses and things, but we don't have those kinds of buses in our city.
Could we add a sentence regarding the urgency of this? We're currently experiencing builder's remedy applications. Without a coordinated area plan, this will result in poor development.
No required parking.
See, let's see.
Jody, I don't know how you can say that a commercial area does not require parking.
The
I mean,
state,
that's
the state,
absolutely absurd.
Well,
Now,
talk
if
to
you're
the
going to
state.
say that if you build housing in the downtown area, this particular area, you can build the housing without any parking. I can understand that one. what I can't understand is how you can say, oh, you can build whatever you want there and not have any parking. That whole commercial area, that would kill, for example, California Street. If you take all of the area of downtown, take out all the parking lots, then say that, no, you can build anything you want without any parking.
The state has said that the city cannot require parking. Now,
For what?
For anything.
For anything,
for-
even the commercial use of the
for-
downtown.
For any use within the half mile of a train station. Now, will an applicant include parking because they understand the market? Likely, but they're not required to have parking.
Which means the amount of parking is something we can't
Reduced.
regulate. Well, possibly, but it might be the opposite. But David, right now, that's not on the table. We've got to decide
Well, so
what
that
we're going to
then
say to
can,
get council to think about California Avenue.
yeah, but I would like to get rid of the state requirement. Why should we mention it?
Because that's why it's
That's
going to be
not possible
redeveloped.
at this
That's
time.
no, that's the logic, David. Is because of that requirement, we better focus on this area. I think that everybody's shaking their head.
Everybody shake their
And
head.
we're all in agreement with that.
Yeah.
It's a good rationale for why the council should focus on this.
Uh-huh. I mean, Jody, you think it's ridiculous too? I mean, you're
I
not saying
think
that since they say it, we're going to go along with that.
We have to. It's one of those regulations that we have to go along. We have no choice.
So
Yeah, we're not arguing state bills here today. But I agree with you, Peter, that because of that the new state law, those parking lots are likely to become developed quicker than otherwise. And therefore the city needs to be ahead of that in having a coordinated area plan to develop with a bigger picture in mind than individual projects coming in doing things without an area plan.
that's exactly it.
Mhm.
Without an area plan, we get 17-story buildings at one end of the avenue. That's not a good plan. So does this sentence that
California.
we just added,
So we don't want to include University Avenue into this at all because it is being studied already.
well, it
We
says
agree
here, no, we have a standard for downtown, David. That's the one before that.
to increase housing. in
But let's
downtown
finish the
area.
California Avenue. Do we all agree with the statement that's on our
Mhm.
screen now? Begins with state requirements and scope future development.
State.
Yes, Board Member Adcock, yes, Board Member Chen. David?
So you're saying that same AB 2097 should apply to a University Avenue.
It does apply. There's no question.
Mhm.
So I'm just putting that first sentence to bring awareness to the council about why you want a coordinated area plan.
Yeah, I
You
think
want
that's
a
very good.
plan because we know there's going to be more development because of these state items.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So you okay, David, with the way she wrote that for California Avenue here?
For California, yeah.
Okay, so do you want to talk about the one for downtown then?
Yeah,
We have a writing here for that. Do you agree with that? Or to increase housing, it should say in the downtown area, right?
Mhm.
An area, wait. No, I'm sorry, it should be a comma there, right, Jody?
The redevelopment of lots is to encourage housing additions. Maintaining the vibrancy of the downtown area.
That's, sounds nice, but it's just nice sounding text. Do we want to get more serious? The parking issue is the same. The downtown retail environment is terrible and could be improved with a coordinated area plan probably. Do we want to push that more? What have we observed in the past year about projects in the downtown area?
I put parking lots, but maybe I should just take that out to be generically
Well-
lots.
David, do you want that left in, that the parking lot projects downtown?
I would, yeah.
Okay, so then
Especially, I mean, I would put them in as especially the parking lots.
she just added that here and it makes sense.
Mhm.
Um,
Could you add in especially the parking lots as to encourage housing? Vibrancy of the downtown
She has
area.
it, except doesn't have the word especially, because that's sort of an adverb we're trying to avoid.
Okay, fine, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so item 3 on our report. Any other questions or comments?
Do we want to delete the El Camino, the railroad? I think that's still relevant.
Yeah, for Encina, I did make some changes that I can undo if you want me to.
I would keep the between the El Camino and the railroad. That helps clarify the area we're
I
talking
think
about.
so, yeah.
I think the near town and country is still good to keep, but also near town, north of town and country between
Yeah,
El Camino and the railroad.
I was realizing the second sentence says that it's adjacent to town and
Ah,
country. So I think that's kind of covered
Yeah.
the more I look at it.
The way we had it before seemed okay, Jody, on that one.
Okay. I was just adding area. More, do you agree with this area item here?
Yeah, we went through that last time.
Well, this was new a second ago, but whoops. Okay, so we're just going to accept this, and we're going to decline this.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Okay, so item 4 then, roof terraces, and Kendra didn't provide any context on that?
Not that I saw, but sorry, I've been,
Well, that's okay. So what do we want to say about roof terraces? We've observed that many multifamily developments used roof terraces to meet open space requirements. Yet there's a lack of clear guidance on how those should be designed.
Should that go under item 4 though? Because doesn't have, it's about birth safe place. Should it be a new item 5 as roof terraces?
it goes along with goal 4, so that's why we put
I
it here.
Oh, that's true in the goal.
Mhm. Okay, so that's good.
I would add there increased use of roof terraces for what's it called, outdoor open space requirements in multifamily housing projects.
Yeah, actually, what we find is that the access to these terraces is challenging with the height limit we have.
Mhm.
If you could let stairs and elevators go up another 10 or 15 feet, then you could have ADA access and other better ways to get to these things.
And also whether roof terraces are even allowed.
Or they're allowed at all. There's a lot of, the public pushes back a lot on those too, the privacy issues.
Mhm.
Do we want to give those kind of rationales, or does the council understand that? So we were just mentioning that we get a lot of feedback from the public regarding the use of outdoor terraces as it affects people's privacy. We get a lot of feedback from applicants that without being allowed to have stair towers and elevators projecting above the height limit, it's hard to make roof terraces really functional. Remember the applicant with the open staircase coming down into the building, all the waterproofing and weird floor plan stuff that creates. How much of that do we want to put here though?
Well, it's because the height of you get into a problem when you have the stairway, it then
Yeah.
changes the height of the building.
Yeah, but you could have a rule that let that go taller as long as it was a certain distance from the edge.
Of course
You
you
don't
could,
see it.
yeah.
And then there's a real need for issues of privacy. How close to the edge of these terraces can you go? That's often what it comes down to, is that we're pulling the railings back or creating planters. Almost always it's possible, but we don't have any real guidelines on how to do it. I think it's fine what she just said. Okay, anything else in this category?
No, I have a minor edit on the top of the recommendation paragraph at the top of this section. There's a word missing.
Let's go scroll to the
Yes,
top of that.
scroll up, please. Above two, centered, it's the last sentence. Our comments this year are centered around, I think it's missing around, increasing importance. Thank you.
Okay, then item number 5, Jody, please.
So is the San Antonio paragraph, that one's done and downtown's done? Okay, and Encina we fixed up. Okay, so and then 5.
So on the Antonio Road area, so some mention, I don't know if it's in here, so, but some mention about the street is lacking in pedestrian and bicycle access and.
Yes, so
ability. Is it-
Peter added that language.
Oh, he did. Okay, fine.
Yes, in the
Oh, yes,
yellow
it's,
here.
I see it. Yeah, it's added
Okay.
in. City services and bicycle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so then 5.
Yeah, so this, the bottom bullet point is the one we just worked on. I don't have any concerns with the actual text. Overall, though, we're spending a lot of text on one thing, which is more pure procedural than the rest of our items. But I think these are all very legitimate points. Any changes to them, David?
Mm-mm. I think I'm okay. Let me just finish up here. Just how do we do it? I mean, how do we haven't related to other agencies at all once. Frequently, the council calls in us and PTC to have a joint meetings. You know, so that's happened quite
I
often.
wouldn't say frequently, but
Not
on
frequently,
occasion.
at least once a year, sort of. They seem to have done that. We haven't been in there more than once in the last couple of years, few years now.
Well, the point all of this is making is that we independently, individually,
Mhm.
I know I do, have a lot of just sort of informal communication with other board members or council members and things. But that's not, nobody in the public knows what that is. Nobody even
Mhm.
on the boards knows what that is.
Mhm.
And this is sort of saying that if we could formalize a process, have liaisons between these boards, it might improve the process from a democratic point of view, but also just productive things. I think that's what we're asking for here, David. It's
So,
really
yeah,
liaisons and better reporting back and forth between boards.
We're doing that. And the council is mentioned in here as well.
Yeah, it says appoint HRB, PTC, and council liaisons to the ARB.
This is you asking the council for liaisons.
Yeah.
And
For
you
a
know,
liaison person to come to our meetings, basically. I mean, I think that
I think all details to be worked out in the future.
Yeah, well, what happens is they actually, they don't happen. We write this up and it doesn't really lead to anything. It gets presented to the council and they check it off as one of those things that they've looked at.
Well, they've got a whole list of priorities. This may not be the top of the priority,
Mhm.
but it doesn't mean we shouldn't be telling them what
Uh-huh.
we've observed over our course of this
Uh-huh.
year.
No, I think it's very good, only if I'm just asking how one could administer it better. So, for example, this list in itself could be presented to the council by us. We could be agendized to present this.
One year, we did that.
Yep.
When Eric Filseth was mayor, he humored me. He said, Derek, I'm only going to do this if I'm sitting next to you at the council. Said, you guys must remember that. All, what, 7
No.
and 5 of us sat here.
Yeah,
The council had to listen to us. Every
Yes.
one of us, you included,
Yes.
said your piece.
yeah.
Eric even let me have the final word on that one.
Uh-huh. I
And
would
they were
like,
very pleased to hear what we said. They didn't really do anything about it, but
no, but I think that,
it was a
I think
good-
it's, this message is different than what we had there. We talked about smaller items. This has got bigger stuff in it.
I think we were talking about San Antonio Avenue then. We're talking about San Antonio now.
I think we could make a direct presentation to the board and that we should push for that somehow during your
Jody, is there
chairmanship.
what's the current process for providing these reports to the council and the PTC? Isn't that now institutional, formalized in the new boards and commissions handbook?
The work plan is put together into a packet with all the other work plans, and there is a, council hearing for that. I wasn't present at last year, but I don't remember there being long presentations or anything like that.
Didn't have it. We didn't have it. I know.
No, I believe council only spoke about particular board stuff that they were concerned about. I think the ARB did not rise to that level.
That means you were doing well.
Yeah, at the moment, that at the time, that was seen as a positive thing. We did not need their supervision. But I don't know, David, that it would be appropriate for us to start pushing that we want to present this to council when they put that board and commission handbook together to make it more efficient, to manage all of this.
No, I
So-
recognize they've got an awful lot of reading to do themselves, and a heck of a busy schedule. And 20 people standing out here, sitting out here who all want to speak about something.
For what
40
it's-
people, whatever.
For what it's
fill
worth,
the
'cause
room.
I was on the board before we were doing annual plans.
Mhm.
And at the time, and I still feel that we felt it was important to give feedback to the council on things we've seen over the past year. To some degree or another, we're the city council's architects. As private architects, we inform our clients when things come to our attention they should know about, a change in the code, change in the situation. That's what we're doing here. Whether they choose to act on it really is up to them. We just want to communicate clearly to them what we see.
Mhm.
And I think we've been doing that pretty clearly here. We limited ourselves to a few topics.
Well, I really like the imagery that you presented at the end here. It's really nicely done.
Okay, well, let's,
First time.
shall we scroll through that? Are there any changes or questions about this? I think hats off to Jody and her staff because they did a bang up job getting this all in here.
Yes,
And it's very nicely presented, Jody.
Yes.
It's attractive and it makes us. look
very
good. Thank you.
attractive, and it looks like we really did something here.
But let's just scroll through. Is there anything we need to change or?
Right there is one I wanted. Sorry, right there on the top of the page on the lower side. Sorry, on
What address?
3001 El Camino Real, the text portion, where it says improve the central building circulation to make the site more usable. And I want to say, and to facilitate the designer's building code compliance. I'm just, putting my lawyer hat on. I don't want us to be responsible for the applicant's building code
Code.
compliance. It's the applicant who has to be building code compliant.
Nobody's going to
You don't want that to come back and, you don't want that to come back and bite you at some point, right?
Yep, to facilitate the applicant's building code compliance.
I would just say to facilitate trash removal. That's
That's
what it was really about. And laundry.
Compliance.
Okay, any other comments? Maybe keep scrolling, Jody, so we scroll through it.
And the rest is good.
The end.
Are we missing one project, the seniors project on,
Wilton Court.
no. Oh, Wilton Court's before, well before. That's
Yeah,
a year before,
That's
yeah.
years ago.
But the senior project on.
On San Antonio?
San Antonio
I think we excluded the ones that have, are not,
are all the
are
way
final
through.
yet or
Yeah,
moved.
We're talking 800 San Antonio, or there's 824 also.
824, I think.
Here's 800.
Right.
Yeah, because the 800 has,
no, not that one.
yeah, but the other one is not finalized yet.
So
Okay.
Next year.
Next year. Okay. Actually, I don't want to give you more work to do either.
Thank you. Okay, so no.
That's very
no
nicely
changes
done.
on the rest of the
Looks
pictures?
good.
That's brilliantly done, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you all for your help on that too.
So before we move to accept this, I would like to point out that a new thing has come up. I noticed this recently when I was presenting our NVCAP stuff to the PTC the other day, that we had made a recommendation to start measuring underground construction like parking garages as they are affected by setbacks and lot coverage at a depth below the ground. We'd recommend 3 feet as a means of trying to get greater landscaping capacity near property lines and also controlling how the stairs came up. And the PTC agreed that this was a good way to start making these changes. This is the kind of thing we would recommend in a report like this. I think it's fair to say that this idea just came up the other day to us. We were the sources of it. And it probably should go in next year's packet if the planning staff doesn't pick it up. But we could stick that in here if we felt so inclined. I don't, because I want to get this done.
Yes,
know,
I think you're there.
I think
Let's
that-
just do it.
Okay, so with that,
That,
I move that
wait, I'll move.
you want to do it? Okay. you
Yeah,
do
I
it.
want to move that we accept this work plan for 2024.
Accept it and present it to city council.
Present it to city council.
Okay, do we have a second on that motion?
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded. Can we have a vote, please?
Board Member Adcock,
Yes.
Board Member Chen,
Yes.
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes,
Chair Balte,
Yes,
motion carries 4-0.
thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is chair and vice chair elections. As the chair, I would like to nominate Kendra Rosenberg to become our next chair, effective at our next hearing, or effective at the close of this hearing, let's say. I have spoken with Kendra about this in advance, and she's indicated that she is willing to take that responsibility on. So I need a second on that motion.
second,
Let's have a vote on that, please.
Board Member Adcock,
Yes.
Board Member Chen,
Yes.
Board Member Hirsch,
yes.
Chair Balte,
Yes,
motion carries 4-0.
thank you very much.
So,
And then we have the question of the vice chair, and I'll look for motions. I believe Board Member Hirsch was going to make a motion regarding the vice chair.
yes, I would like to recommend Ying-Si Chen to be our next vice.
Speak into the microphone.
president. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Now you can. So the motion is to nominate Ying-Si Chen for vice chair.
Second?
Okay, Board Member Chen, do you want to address that?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for your nomination, and yeah, I will take it.
Good.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Can we have a vote on that, please?
Board Member Adcock,
Yes.
Board Member Chen,
Yes.
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes,
Chair Balte,
Yes,
motion carries 4-0.
thank you very much. With that, I would like to thank my colleagues for the distinct honor and pleasure of serving with you. I look forward to working with the new board and leadership next year. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is minutes. Is that what we have here, Jody? Approval of minutes for the meeting of January 18th, 2024. Any comments or motions, please?
One minor thing on packet page 61, at the center of the page, Board Member Chen asked, at the end of on the right side, it should be the ceiling height instead of seating height.
So packet page 61,
In the middle of the page, and that's where I said it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. On paragraph 7, board member Chen asked if they had any thoughts on the floor assembly and what the ceiling height. It should be ceiling height instead of seating.
oh, ceiling height?
Ceiling,
Okay.
not seating.
Ceiling. Got it, ceiling.
Okay, anything else?
I have one minor and a question. So on page 63, at the top, fifth line down, it's 1 hour rated window, not 1 out rated window. And the other one on, it's a question for my colleagues here. On page 53, I want to make sure I'm remembering this correctly. Page 53 at the last sentence on the third large paragraph, where it says ARB that the best solution to minimize the hazard is to not create the bus shelters at all. And I recollect her saying not create all glass bus shelters. Am I right about that? Not, I don't think she was recommending that we should not have any bus shelters.
I think she actually showed a bus shelter that was more appropriate, she thought.
Where's the text?
Yeah, what line are you on?
So oral communications, there's one last sentence, Chair Balte thanked Shani, one just above that where it says ARB, that the best solution to minimize the hazard is to not create the bus shelters at all. I don't think that's what she said. I think she said is to not
I just need to know where you are first.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know where you are.
Glass.
I
bus
see the
shelter.
paragraph. I don't see the line. What does the line start with? What word?
ARB, that's the
Miss-
best solution.
Miss
ARB.
Kleinhaus, it starts with.
Okay.
Yeah, the
ARB.
sentence starts with Ms. Kleinhaus.
Wanted to take time
At
to
the
remind
very
ARB
end,
that
the very
that
end
the
of
best
that.
solution to minimize the hazard is to not create glass.
Glass.
All glass
all
bus
glass
shelters.
bus
All
shelters,
glass.
yeah.
All
Clear
glass.
glass, to be more precise.
All clear glass.
Mhm.
Is it possible to just review the transcript and be sure?
Yes,
get that right?
we
Yeah.
will confirm on that one.
Yes, please.
I remember at the time sort of scratching my head at her comment because I'm not sure this is inaccurate in fact, but I think it's inaccurate in intent.
Right.
But if we could just let staff check that.
Yeah, because she was showing the images of shelters with kind of fritted glass and such as a way to
That's
have.
correct.
And so I don't think she was recommending not having bus shelters at all. So I don't want her misrepresented here.
Yeah, we can take a look at the video because it might better show the intent than just the verbal
We might
words.
just eliminate the sentence altogether.
Yeah.
That's true too.
But if you could use your judgment.
It is a summary minutes. And so, yeah, we'll make sure it gathers the intent.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay, then motions.
I'd like to move that we approve this meeting minutes with those changes.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Can we have a vote, please?
Board Member Adcock,
Yes.
Board Member Chen,
Yes,
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes,
Chair Balte,
Yes,
motion carries 4-0.
thank you. Okay, so we are now done with that. Last item on our agenda is board member questions, comments, and announcements. And I would like to bring everyone up to speed that I attended the Planning and Transportation Committee meeting last week where they discussed the NV cap, and in particular, our recommendations on the design standards for that. And of interest was the fact that they decided to recommend a lower height limit on the NV MXN and MXH, I believe both of those areas. If you recollect, staff had recommended buildings be limited to 55 feet. We had thought 65 feet was appropriate, and they settled on 45 feet. And I think that's interesting for all of us to hear. This will be presented to the city council, who will make a final determination. But we're at the point now where our recommendation, staff's recommendation, and the PTC are all different. So it will be of interest.
Why don't we actually make a motion that we disagree with their height limitation?
Well, I don't know that we can.
May I ask, like?
Yeah, this is not on the agenda, so we need to,
Yeah, we're not discussing this. I'm just telling you what the PTC did.
Just question though, does PTC override ARB? Or is it just two separate recommendations?
2 separate recommendations.
And when is the council's meeting?
I believe the council is going to review this in June. It depends on how staff puts it all together. I would like, and I very much hope the new chair appoints one of us or does herself to represent our point of view on this. I think it's actually rather important. But the purpose of right now is just to announce that this is what's going on. Any other questions, comments, or announcements?
I just want to thank Chair Balte for his leadership in the past year, and it's been a pleasure working under your leadership, and look forward to continuing working with you as a board member as well. And congratulations to new Chair Rosenberg and Vice Chair Chen. Thank you.
And I'd like to not only ditto all of those comments, but say that Chair Bolte has really spent an incredibly tight year and having us meet our objectives of making decisions here with a very, very clear direction to every one of us. And so we've managed to get a lot of decisions made, and it's primarily for your leadership that has happened.
Yeah, I also like to say thank you. And also one more thing is to make sure all the meetings end on time.
Okay, thank you, everyone. With that, we are adjourned.